to the show. We've been talking about this whole subject for our show has been about rape. We talked about rape within a relationship, and now we're about to go onto rape within a marriage. And a lot of people don't really even fathom that this can happen, but it does happen at an alarming rate. And so I'm going to have Brenda announce who our caller is, and we're going to go from there to talk about this very important subject.
Okay, the Making Marriage Work segment, we have advocate for survivors and a critic against the rape culture and writer and blogger, Miss Ashley Michelle. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the last name right, Papon or Papon, but you could tell me once you get on the phone with us. So welcome, Ashley Michelle, to the McCain train.
Thank you. And either pronunciation is correct.
Oh, okay.
So, Ashley, I'm going to give you a little history of what I found out, that back in 1936, there was called something, the History of the Plea of the Crown, where the Chief Justice, his name was Mr. Sir Matthew Hale, was talking about marital rape, and his statement about marital rape back then was that a husband could not be guilty of committing rape for his lawful wife. It was due to their mutual marital consent and contract that she gave up her rights. In 1822, the summary of the law related to pleading and evidence in criminal cases, it stated that a husband also cannot be guilty of rape upon his wife. And we didn't seem like things didn't happen until almost 100 years later, until 1976, I believe, that we even start, thinking that it could happen. Actually, why is it so hard for people to understand that even in a marriage, no means no?
Well, we could talk about that until my daughter is my age, and we still would only be scratching the surface of answering that question. The reality is we live in a culture, the rape culture, which is premised on the idea that women are available for sex at any time, all the time. And this idea is supercharged in marriage and relationships. The reality within the United States is that spousal rape wasn't even entirely criminalized until 1993, and those standards are still only routinely enforced in 17 states.
Wow.
And the remaining, yes, we have a significant way to go. Even in states like Tennessee, South Carolina, and North Carolina, if you actually examine their laws, they have a higher threshold for marital rape than they do even acquaintance rape. And a lot of that is simply because we still have this concept of entitlement around women's bodies. There's very much this idea in place that a marriage license is license for a husband to have access to his wife with impunity.
Now, how common is marital rape?
Why is marital rape this nebulous area where we're even further behind the curve than date rape?
No, I was saying how common is wife rape?
Oh, how common. I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
The problem you run into with statistics on rape is that only approximately 40% of all rapes are ever reported. And of those, less than a quarter ever see any formal process of, through the legal system of having the person actually brought up in charges. And because of the stigma associated with marital rape, it's even harder to pin down. But the generally accepted statistic since about 1985 has been between 10 and 14% of all married women have experienced at least one forced sexual assault by a partner.
Ashley, speaking as far as a man is concerned, I don't quite understand the concept of marital rape, because it's not something that, that's embedded into me. Talk a little bit about, in the aspect of a man, why do we feel, and this may be hard for you to answer, why do we feel so conceptually adequate to say you have to make love to me because you're married, but we don't think that the wife has the same right to say you have to make love to me because I'm married. I know it's because I have more power over you, but mentally, what is the concept that we have that that's okay?
Well, I'll do my best, but if I knew how to get inside of a man's head, I wouldn't have to constantly remind my husband when trash day is. In all seriousness, though, not to make light of a sensitive subject, but the truth is we live in a culture that is very misogynistic. And going back on that idea that women should be available to men at any time, all the time, you know, it really speaks to a concept of entitlement that we have. Even as I spoken on this subject in previous encounters, what's always been present to me is the idea of submission. It's very easy to see where this idea comes from when you look at our presidential election. We have a man accused of sexually assaulting children running for one of our major political parties, a man that has spoken openly about women in completely objectionable terms, rendering them to items of consumption. You know, he's unapologetic about the fact he's cheated on all of his wives. He openly discusses the likelihood of having a sexual relationship with his daughter. And this reveals a very clear narrative that the only purpose women serve in our society is as a sex object. And that starts when they're children. And we also let men believe that they're completely controlled by their hormones. Even if you look at what happens with accusations of date rape, how often do we hear, well, how can we blame him? She was wearing that short skirt.
Yeah.
So Ashley, how did you get involved in this? What made you so willing and such an advocate for wife rape or rape in general?
Well, what got me into rape activism originally is that I am actually a survivor. I am not a survivor of marital rape. My husband was very adamant that I needed to stress that on the air.
I'm sure he did.
So just to clarify that. And so I was actually a victim of date rape when I was 18, about 2 months after I graduated high school, shortly before I started my freshman year of college. And what I found was I was really naive and really sheltered about the process. So I went through the process of not only going to the hospital to get the rape kit collected, but I actually attempted to file charges. And the experience was significantly more traumatic than the sexual assault itself, because this was in 2003. And I actually had met my offender through the internet, which at the time was very taboo. It's less so now. Everybody's got a Facebook. Everyone's got a MySpace. You know, Meetup is the way that a lot of college kids find people who share their interests. But at the time, it just wasn't done. You only use the internet to find people who had one thing on their mind. And it was such a traumatic experience, especially when I was facing police officers who were threatening to bring me up on charges for filing a false police report. I resolved that I would not stop speaking out, and I would do whatever it took to make sure people heard my story and used it to change the world, so that no other rape victim would be sitting in an emergency room trying to decide between getting the antibiotics that they needed because they didn't know the obvious sexual history of their rapist, or filing charges. And that's what led me to this. And wife/spousal/marital rape is probably the least addressed, most under-recognized kind of sexual violence we have in the status quo. So it's become a pet project of mine because of how many of my friends have lived through being raped in the course of a relationship, and they don't feel like they fit into any one narrative because they knew their offenders, but they were in a relationship with them. It's a really difficult thing for them to come to terms with. So I decided that this would not be an area that I refused to speak out on, even though I don't have the experience with it that I do with, say, being raped on a college campus.
You have the experience with it because you lived through the rape part, but not the marital rape. But I thank you for being able to answer these questions. But I would really like to know what's the how are victims of wife rape different from other rape victims?
The biggest thing that you'll see with victims of spousal or partner rape is that they have an even more difficult time recognizing that what they experienced was, in fact, rape. And we have a lot of that confusion in our status quo, too. I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine who is a real junkie for soap operas. And the number one soap opera super couple is Luke and Laura from General Hospital.
Yes, it is.
And that story involved Luke raping her, and then it was transformed into this love story. So the idea is, if this is a person who loves you and cares about you, this person that you have a commitment to stay together with, to piggyback on the name of your talk show, then, of course, they can't cross that line of violence. But the reality is they can, and they do.
You know, actually, I know there's some statistic that's saying that a lot of women who are a part of wife rape, most of them have been even threatened or beaten, and it is almost, they submit to the sexual rape in the marriage because they don't want to be threatened or beaten down. Have you talked to anybody that has maybe went through this, and is this a part of what is not reported because they're saying, well, you had sex, but it was easier for me to have sex with the individual than to die. And so we kind of think like because that person had sex, it's okay because they're a spouse.
Right. I would say absolutely. When you get right down to the bones of it, in spousal rape instances, there is a domestic violence rate of more than 70%. The spousal rape usually comes after the physical assault. That doesn't mean that you need to have one in order for the other to happen. They're not mutually exclusive. But there is a high correlation between the two because once you cross that line of assaulting your partner physically, it gets significantly easier to go even further by taking them sexually. And the fear of even more retribution keeps a lot of victims quiet about it. Even with our message board, After Silence, what we see is that even as these women can be upfront about, I was date raped in college or I was sexually molested by my grandfather, they have a much harder time talking about the rapes that they experience in the course of their relationships because there is that inbuilt fear. Even when they're out of their relationship, they still fear the consequences of speaking out. They have been threatened to that point.
Ashley, what are some legal rights that married women might have regarding spousal rape?
That's a tricky question. It's worth remembering that rights, you only have the rights that the state conveniently recognizes in the moment. Am I right? And I'm a little bit more cynical about this because my husband is an attorney. So I see just how far rights go on a daily basis. There's also, unfortunately, the reality that every state-specific codes and statutes regarding marital rape are different. Like I mentioned earlier, only something like 17 states reflect legal statutes that actually command marital rape be treated as the same as non-marital rape. But like in South Carolina, there has to be a clear showing of force or violence used, and the threshold of that force or violence within the course of a spousal rape is significantly higher and under more scrutiny than if you and I were just hanging out at a bar and I up and decked you in the face. But here, I think a better standard is what is a universal right of human autonomy and basic bodily autonomy. All women have the right to say no, and it doesn't matter if they're married to this person. It doesn't matter if they initially said yes and now they're changing their mind. It doesn't matter if they are attracted to them, but they still want to say no. All women in any circumstances have the right, the inalienable moral justification for saying no.
Are there different types of marital rape?
From a legal perspective, yes, there are different types of marital rape, just as there are different legal recognitions for acquaintance rape. Depending on the state that you're in, rape can have degrees similar to murder, first or second. And obviously the supplemental charges with that can vary as well. But as far as just from an activist perspective, rape is rape is rape. There's no story. Like, my experience with acquaintance rape isn't worse than someone else's experience with being raped by a partner they know and love and have been with for years and years.
Right.
The reality is rape doesn't have an intensity to it based on who the other person is. We've seen people who have been raped by strangers and people who have been raped by individuals they've known their whole lives, and the effects are the same.
I was going to ask you about that. What are some of the risk factors of rape, of spousal rape?
The number one risk factor for spousal rape is domestic violence. Okay. The accepted statistic is within the course of relationships that have domestic violence, the spousal rape risk goes up by more than 75%. That is obviously something that can be aggravated by other factors such as substance abuse, poverty, and other risk factors like behavioral management issues.
So, Ashley, let's talk a little bit about helping someone right now who is in a situation of being in marital rape or wife rape. I'm looking at a statistic, and it says that some of the factors of why wife rape is unreported is because the reluctancy to talk about it, which is because, number one, was loyalty to the husband, privacy in the family, unwillingness to accept their own victimization, and the reluctance to label the experience as rape. How do we talk to a woman right now? Because I know there's someone that's listening on the show that either knows about someone or is going through it now. Talk to them right now about why it's important that you let the authorities know that you're in a situation of wife rape or marital rape.
Well, the first thing to know is that your only obligation is to take care of yourself. It isn't your fault. What they've done to you or what you're aware they're doing to someone else isn't your fault. Nobody makes the conscious choice to be a victim, and therefore nobody has the responsibility to curb a victimizer's behaviors. But if you should decide to go forward with pressing charges or alerting the police, I can't emphasize this enough. Make sure you have a support system, whether that's calling your local rape crisis center or a trusted friend, so that you have someone to weather that storm with you. Especially since when you're able to own that you have been a victim, most of the time people want to help. And they can help you access resources that you may not otherwise know are available to you. But it is important to know, especially within the context of spousal rape. Spousal rape is unique in that it is the most violent form of rape that can occur. And that isn't to say that the assaults themselves are inherently more violent than being drugged at a party like I was. What I mean is that they have a higher mortality rate, specifically because of the comorbidity of domestic violence within those situations. You have a right to be safe, and you have a right to be safe in a relationship with someone who professes to care about you.
Miss Ashley, can you tell us a little bit of what you do and how you help rape victims?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. So I am the press liaison for After Silence. We are one of the biggest message boards on the Internet for survivors of sexual violence and their loved ones. I also serve as a board moderator, and in that role, I am curating posts from thousands of survivors every month. I'm responding to emails. I run our Facebook page, so when people have account issues or they want to find some additional support, they can message us on Facebook, and I'll respond to that and direct them to our website if that turns out to be a better fit. And in my most comprehensive duty as the press liaison, I do exactly what I've done here, which is, give interviews and make appearances and host talks to help break down the rape culture once and for all by telling my story, getting our website's message board and web address out there, and most importantly, letting people know that whether they choose to sign up for our message board, which is free, or not, they are not alone. There are significantly more resources out there. The speaker you folks had on before me is actually affiliated with a different board that our board came out of. Without Pandora's Aquarium, After Silence wouldn't even exist. So, we all work together for the same goal.
Hey, so Pat, talk me through this. I'm sorry, Pat. Ashley, she just said Pat. Ashley, talk me through this. I'm in a situation where I know that I've been raped in my marriage, and I need some help, and I need to contact you. Talk me through the process, because I'm scared, because I don't know what to do. I don't even know that I feel that I have been, but I'm not sure, because I don't really know all the information. Talk me through the process, so a woman out there that is feeling that they've been raped in the marriage, how would I go through the process to ease me to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3?
No problem. The first step is knowing to trust yourself. If something is causing you doubt, there's a reason for that. You need to believe yourself, and you need to trust in your perception of what has happened. Rape is not a misunderstanding, no matter how often we try and dress it down as such. So once you've reached the resolution with yourself that you don't know what happened, but you have a good idea something bad occurred, the next step is to get on to Facebook or Google and start researching for rape resources. I found After Silence by looking up on Google rape, help, and recovery, or something to that effect. I don't remember the exact search term. It's been a decade now. And actually, I went to Pandora's Aquarium first, and then when I outgrew Pandora's, found After Silence. So then you come to After Silence or Pandora's Aquarium. Both boards allow a limited amount of perusing of the website without registering for an account, but both websites offer privacy. You don't have to register under your real name. We just do it based on usernames and email addresses. And both websites offer totally separate, inclusive forums that are just dedicated to sharing your story. And it's funny how after you read a certain number of stories that sound an awful lot like what you went through, it really does a lot to absolve you of any lingering doubts. And from there, you can make the decision as to what is best for you. Maybe what's best for you is just focusing on your own recovery and getting out of the relationship. Maybe what's best for you is reporting it to the police. But for a very small segment of people, and I want to emphasize that this is not common, for a small segment of people, it's learning how to move past the rape and stay in the relationship with the person who crossed that line. Everyone's first step is different, and therefore also is their last step very different.
That's interesting, because I was, you don't really think about, the person wanting to stay in the relationship, but there is a period where you may want to reconcile with that relationship. So I'm glad, Ashley, that you shared that with us. I want to just one other thing before we let you go, and I thank you very much for sharing the information. And I do want you to let people know how they can get in contact with you. Let's say that I know that I've been raped, I've been repeatedly raped, and I want to get out. Can you help me?
I am in a very privileged position to be able to help you connect with the people who will be able to help you, because obviously if you're say in North Carolina, I think you folks are from back in my neck of the woods in the Midwest.
Yes.
Being located in the Bay Area, there's not a lot I can do, but I can put you in touch with people who can help you, and I will do that for you.
And so, Ashley, how can they get in contact with you if they need some assistance with just some counseling, some education, and even if they need to leave, how can they get in contact with you to help them?
They can get in touch with me by coming to After Silence's message board or our Facebook page. I'm also a contributing writer to Adios Barbie, which is a blog about a feminist response to pop culture as it relates to body image. I'm over there. They can follow me there or contact my editor. She's always a phone call away from me. So there's no shortage to the ability to reach me if you're in trouble.
Can you give the website address?
Sure. It's aftersilence.org.
Yeah, and we'll have that information on there as well. Ashley, we tell everybody that once they're on the show, they're a family member. Welcome to the family of Let's Stay Together Talk, the McCain Train. This is not going to be our only time we talk about this subject because we feel that it needs to be talked about, especially in the church, where people can understand these situations happen, and the church needs to step up and have an outlet so people can talk about it and share about it and recover from rape and situations that have caused rape. And so I thank you very much for being on the show with us today, and definitely look forward to us contacting you again, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be in the family.
Thank you very much.
Happy to be in the family.
And we thank you very much for sharing again, and we'll be talking to you real soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
All right. You know, I don't think a lot of people even think about the fact that you can be raped in a marriage. And I think a lot of women, this can help them because you don't have to just stay in a situation. You can get some help. You can get some counseling. Because, you want to try to save the marriage, but like Ashley said, the first thing you got to think about when something like that happens, you've got to think of yourself.
And that's the one time you should be selfish, ladies. Think of yourself and your health. And if you have children in a household. But, before we move on, I just want to say that it was a couple of things within the spousal rape that portrayed to different types of marital rape. Was battering rape, which she did say domestic violence, the force-only rape, and one that some men get into the sadistic type of rape, when we was talking about earlier, when you want them to dress up like that. And it was one of those top stories a couple of years ago when that preacher's wife, she killed her husband with the heel because they didn't believe that he was raping her. He had her dress up real crazy. I mean, that was all over the news. Yeah. She went to jail for it. And it's like a lot of people said, well, they don't think she should have went to jail. That's another sin. You committed murder, though.
Well, but then you got to look at the psychiatric scenario that she went through, the trauma that she went through. And, we let people in court always come up with temporary insanity. When someone is violating you like that, that is a point where you can snap. Now, I'm not saying that killing someone is right, but you've got to look at the fact that if she was telling someone that this was happening and they didn't listen, we've got to be more attentive to listen to things like that happen. Because you are married, men does not give you the right to have sex with your wife or forcefully take sex from your wife when you want to. She still has the right to say no. And if I don't say anything more, the final thing I want to say, and even in a marriage, she still has the right to say no. And so if you are taking something from someone you claim to love, re-examine your love and re-examine should you even be in a relationship in the first place. Because a relationship is built out of love, not you taking love. So we thank Ashley for coming on the show with us and sharing about After Silence. And, baby, where are we going now?
We are going to our Salvation Call segment and our new Pureflix commercials, as well as the dollar GoFundMe.
Yeah, the dollar GoFundMe. Nobody's gave $1 yet. We've got some money, but somebody give $1. Prove me wrong, because I said nobody will give $1. Hey, this is Rick McCain, Brenda McCain, Tracy Brown Howard, and Dion. Thank you for listening to our show. Hope you come back. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks.